Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast. Today, my guest is James Coma. How are you doing, James?
Hey, Mark, all good. Very
So,
excited to
um,
be here.
so, so James, where are you located at?
I'm in Europe right now,
Okay.
but I've done a lot of work here in Europe and the United States.
Okay. So you've been to the United States probably a few times, maybe.
I did a little bit of coaching, acting coaching in Los Angeles,
Nice.
and so I love the United States.
Yeah,
That's
it's pretty awesome. You get a
that's my
variety.
home.
So James, kind of what is it you do, and how did you get to that point?
Yeah, so I'm an actor, an entrepreneur,
Okay.
and I always kind of knew what I wanted to do in my life. Ever since I was a kid, there was never really a doubt. I never went through a period of time where I was confused.
Okay.
And I did go through some confusion when I was a teenager. I graduated from high school, and there
Mhm.
was a lot of pressure from my family to do something like, do something real, quote
Yeah, I
unquote,
know how that is. Yeah.
and get a real job, study something that's going to make money and whatnot. And I kind of got confused, like, okay, is that really what I want to do?
Right.
But at some point, I just kind of got back to the basics and kind of tuned in with myself. And I said, what I want to do is what I've always knew I wanted to do, which is
Yes.
acting
Yes.
and being in the entertainment industry. And I always talk about this. But when I was a kid, I always had this vision of
Okay.
what my life would look like. And it
Uh-huh.
was always very, I'm a Christian and I believe in God. I believe in the universe. I believe in all that stuff. And at this point in my life, I believe that that was God's way of telling me, what my purpose was
Yes.
uh, in life. So I just went for it, and I started doing what I loved, and I also of course besides acting, I'm also an entrepreneur, and it's
Cool.
funny because um, being an entrepreneur and being an actor at the same time kind of has allowed me to get the best of both worlds, and
Yeah, win-win.
now getting into being an executive producer, which is you know everything I could have ever dreamed of. So yeah.
So was that intimidating? Did you know imposter syndrome when you were going to be doing that the first time?
Not really. I mean,
Really
it
cool.
was it was like I do have imposter syndrome sometimes, like after I do something or a big opportunity knocks at my door, and then I start like, okay, so am I supposed to be doing this? Because
Uh-huh.
I fall into the trap of overthinking a lot,
Wow, I can relate to that one.
but no, really, it's just I think that I was so used, it was so familiar to me because ever since I was a kid, I had those visions in my head.
Okay.
I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted an Oscar. I knew I wanted,
Yeah.
to be on a red carpet. I wanted to be in the spotlight, tell stories. I wanted, to be in business. And sometimes people nowadays they come to me for advice, and
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of I kind of get upset because I don't really know how to give them advice because it's like it comes natural to me. I
Sure.
never had to force it. I never really had to learn. I just naturally knew what steps to take. And I knew that if I didn't know how to do this, I had to find out how to do it.
Right, right.
But it wasn't like I went to college and got this big fancy degree and now I
Yeah.
go around telling people. So it's like, I don't know how to do it, but I know how to do it. So yeah, it was always like there. So I think when the time came to act it out, I just
Uh-huh.
went for it.
Well, I think when it comes that way, I think you're in flow. I think it's truly what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
People I think try and force things that really they don't really. Well, I talk to so many people. They know their dream, but then that's not dream may not make money, so they're going to go do something that makes money, but they probably hate.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you don't know how to do it because God really doesn't want you to do that.
Yeah.
Because when you're in flow, it just, I mean, I don't know if it comes easy, but it comes easier,
Yeah.
and you do kind of know what the next step is. Sometimes you don't know what 10 steps is up there, but it gets
Yeah.
there by the time you get there.
And there's actually a quote that I read once that said, "When you start to walk, the path appears."
Yes,
So
very
it's
true.
like sometimes you don't actually need to have everything figured out. Like if you know that this is what you want to do and you have a calling, something's calling you to go and do it.
Yep.
then maybe that's for a reason. There's something there.
I
So just
agree.
go, and the path does appear, and
It
it
does.
blows my mind because I can't explain it, and I'm usually a very logical guy. I like to
Hmm.
find out the why behind everything, but I just can't explain why. I just know that it works. That's how I know
Well, it
that
counts.
exists.
No, and it is. And I mean, do you speak in front of people on this besides the podcast, or do you speak in front of audiences?
Not yet, but I'm working on a
Okay.
podcast. So soon, I hope by the end of this year, the podcast is going to be up and running.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I like to share stories with people, and I like to be in front of people. Be in a crowd. I love the audience, and I think that as a
Yeah,
performer, you have to like the audience and do it for them, but
true.
also do it for you. Like have the right balance of knowing where those two worlds kind of collide.
No, and your podcast or whatever you do is going to be great. I just could see. I had a vision of you being in front of a big audience, kind of talking about this, your mindset, and all this. And yeah, I have to get back. Do you have a name for your podcast?
Not yet. I'm
Okay.
brainstorming because I had a little bit of a name, but maybe I'm gonna change it. So
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
actually have a name yet, but yeah, it's gonna be about the entertainment industry, and I have already some guests ready to go. We're gonna start
awesome.
probably filming some episodes pretty soon.
Very cool.
So yeah, very excited about that too.
So you can have your own studios and all this.
I don't know. Maybe at some point, yeah, I will like
Okay.
put together something. But I wanted to do like very cozy and like yeah. If you were talking to somebody on a coffee shop, it just
Right. Right.
that's the thing. One thing that I realized is that when I was a kid, I had all these people that I looked up to, and to me, they were like unreachable. So far away
I hear
in
you.
the distance. It's like
Uh,
if you're out there in the sea just desperately trying to find an island and just can find it because it just seems to be moving further and further away, right? So
yes.
those
Yes.
were the artists that I looked up to. And then at some point when I started really getting serious about it, the more familiar I got with the crafts and the business side of things.
Right.
And as I said, I've been in business and done business and sales marketing and all that stuff. And then I've done that in the acting industry and as a
Right.
performer and as a producer. Um, so I forgot what I was going with it. Oh yeah, so as I got more familiar and more into all this flow, I started
Yeah.
realizing that those guys are just like you and I.
They
And when you
are.
think
Yes.
about it,
Exactly.
they're just people, and I
Yep.
think it's
Amen.
I don't want to say foolish, but it's weird when people like they look at their favorite actors or their favorite artists and they're like, oh my god, like he's my hero, he's like a
Yeah.
god, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't know, really, is he? He's just
No. I mean,
he's just a human being, and that's why I
he
want
is.
to be cozy, and like just having a conversation with artists because I want the world to realize that at the end of the day we're all the same, and so the potential
Amen.
is within each and every one of us, not just some that make
Yes.
it and some that don't.
Yeah, and I hope you get that across because these people do put them up on such a pedestal, that it's just like, and we're all human. And when they fail, I mean, they really, it's just like we all go through trials and tribulations and stuff. And it's just like, the pressure must be on those people when they
Mhm.
get with that, all the people, in the
Yeah.
paparazzi and all that stuff. And it's just like, I don't know how you put up with that day in and day out. We have these people going crazy over you. And, um, I don't know, but you got your work cut out for you because there's so many people that see them as. I have to ask, when did you start getting into this industry? At what age?
So my first job was actually I worked with a little production that the BBC did in Europe,
Okay,
and I was 16 years old at the time. But I
nice.
was always like, I always liked to act, and I was like,
Uh,
always. I remember when I was a kid, I would go out in. We had like a little balcony,
okay,
and so it was like out in the street, right? So
right.
I would go out there and just like sing a song or do a monologue, and everybody in the town was like, "Oh, you're the guy that does the monologues out there in the balcony, right?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Oh,
sure, that's me."
that's cool.
So I was always like that. It was like kind of an escape for me as well.
I can understand that.
I
Yeah.
grew up with, so that's, I think that's kind of like the stories that when I grew up, I had a very dysfunctional family, and
Okay.
let's just say that I didn't come from like a very good family or whatever. My dad was never around.
Okay.
I had a lot of arguments with my mother. She was very abusive and all that
Hmm.
stuff, so it was very difficult for me.
Yeah.
And acting and just being out there was like everything that I was holding in, as a kid. I, w-
Right.
I was able to let it go when I was acting, right?
True. Yeah.
And even watching movies, like all the movies were like my escape too. Everything was possible when I was watching a movie. I wasn't thinking about why my mom had beaten me up or whatever, or why my dad
Hmm.
wasn't coming home, whatever. I was just like, it was the movie and me. And I was like, I remember I made a promise to myself. I said, one day I'm going to tell my story to the world, and the world is going to listen. So
Yes. Yes.
that's why I need to go through this, right?
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so I was always like, it's kind of like everything just worked out for me because
Yep.
it was always meant to be, and I never
Amen.
questioned.
Yes.
So when I was 16 and I got the chance to finally get into this, as work, it
Uh.
doesn't feel like work, but it is.
Yep. I know
It
what you mean.
was a no-brainer. And
Yep.
I've gone through periods of time where I've been more involved, and other periods of time where I've done other stuff. But yeah, pretty much all my life, I
Okay.
guess, you know, as a job and doing it for a living, probably the last 2, 4, 5 years.
Okay.
But it's always been part of my life. So I can really quite pinpoint the time where I said, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this for the rest of
Yeah.
my
It
life.
was just yes. Yeah. So when you were a really little kid, did you put on plays and stuff like that and write stories, or did you?
Oh, yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you? Okay. Cool. I
And
would have been
I didn't
surprised if
have a
you
lot
had.
of friends, but what I did was I would actually write stories
Okay.
and write the characters. We had a very big family. My dad had like 4 sisters and a brother, so there were like
Okay.
6 siblings, and all of them had like 3 or 4 kids age. So
Oh
it
wow,
was
you
like
did.
a
Yeah.
big family.
Uh,
And I would write stories like thinking about, okay, so my cousin could play this character, and then my uncle could play this other character, and I would just put together the story, and then I would just go hang out with them on a Saturday or Sunday and just film that stuff.
huh.
And they were like, "Oh my god, when is this kid gonna grow up?" But I was like having fun,
Yeah.
It was the
Exactly.
time of my
That's.
life. So,
That is.
so yeah, I did a lot of that stuff.
And I think that's good. And I think I know you're having fun still. And
Yeah,
so many adults don't have fun. They hate their
yeah,
life. They can't wait for their retirement. They can't wait for the weekend. They can't wait for they're always waiting. And and I always say do what your calling is, what is flow, and the money starts flowing to you.
yep.
So it's very much a win-win rather than forcing it. But the majority of the people don't get that. So I mean, gosh, have you been to Hollywood? Probably. You
I
were in
lost you
Hollywood.
there for.
You were in Hollywood.
What do you mean? I'm in Hollywood.
You worked in Hollywood in California.
I haven't actually worked in Hollywood, but I know a lot of people there, and pretty much
Okay.
all of the productions that I take on, they're Hollywood productions. So
Okay.
I did start in Europe because just when you're starting out, you just pretty much take whatever comes your way,
Sure.
right?
Right. Exactly.
And I still do a lot of stuff because I just like it and I love it. And
Yeah.
every chance I get, being on a set or working with a writer, whatever it is, every chance I get, I take it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I like Hollywood productions, and I think that American cinema and the American movies are like the best out there. And I just don't really actually like the European cinema. I think it's getting better though
Okay.
recently. I think it's evolved because probably nowadays, especially after 2020,
Oh yeah.
um, everything kind of went like the barriers and frontiers kind of just dissolved a little bit, and everything went more global.
Yeah.
Where
Very much.
you,
Yeah.
you- so before maybe you were like in Madrid, but you had clients in the United States, and it was very challenging for you to keep those clients because you were in Madrid. But now here we are, post-pandemic times, and you can click a button, and just like right now, right?
Yep.
We're meeting, and it's almost like we're in person now. Of course,
It
it's not
is very much.
here, but it's so much easier, and I think that's also reflected in movies and all this content that's being created.
Yeah.
But it's I once heard somebody say that the United States always get there first, so it's like
Okay.
that's why they're we're like a world leading country,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
And then a couple of years later everybody else follows, and I think that's what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, Hollywood movies have always been great,
Yeah.
but Europe, it's a little bit more different. The way they do movies and the way they create stuff, I think it's probably more about like the feelings and the emotion of it, and it leaves a lot to interpretation.
Okay.
Whereas in the
Okay.
United
I
States,
know
it's like,
exactly what you
you
mean.
want
Yeah.
action, you got action. Let's get Tom
Yeah.
Cruise to
You
do a
do.
stunt.
Yeah. Yeah. We're blowing
And
up stuff, car chases, and stuff like that. Yes.
yeah,
Oh
but
yeah.
that's what I like. I like the thrill, and
Yeah.
it's fun. That's what makes it fun.
So, is there like a Hollywood in Europe, kind of that type of area, and where a lot of movies are filmed?
I don't think so. I mean, there are a lot of in most productions actually are filmed outside of the United States,
Hmm.
and that's just merely bureaucracy, and it's just so much easier to film outside of the United States because of funding. This
Oh
it's
yeah.
more accessible. You've got tax credits and all that stuff,
Hmm.
and but there isn't really like a hot spot where all people kind of go,
Not known for that. Okay.
except for London. But London is not Europe, but London would be probably more like the European Hollywood.
Really?
um,
Okay. Okay.
but still London is kind of like the United Kingdom is like its own place. It's
True.
not Hollywood, but it's not Europe either. So
Yeah. Kind of in between. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So, I kind of think you already answered your favorite genre of movie. I mean, do you have a?
Action.
That's what I figured you'd say.
I love action movies and science fiction too.
Oh, cool.
Actually, I love aliens.
No, that's
And I think it's so much fun, to be able to explore that and
yep.
blow people's minds. It's just have
Yeah.
fun with that. Um, I actually once tried comedy, and I was awful at it. And it's funny because I'm a very funny guy. So
Uh-huh.
if you meet me, I'm always joking and laughing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then when I'm in front of a camera, it's very obvious that I'm faking it.
Oh, I see.
I got inspired. I watched Friends and I saw Matthew Perry, and I'm like, I want to do what this guy's doing. And I'm like, oh wait, I'm no Matthew Perry.
Not yet.
Exactly. No, I mean he was just naturally funny, and
Yeah,
some people are naturally funny,
they
and they're
are.
able to kind of channel that through their characters. But for me, it's actually the other way around. I find it so much
Okay.
easier to be like a villain or being in like a very very dark character, and get really mad or whatever. I like those characters. It just
Okay.
they make my life, and
Yeah.
because it's like you go through a whole journey when you're creating one of those characters, right? Like
True.
it's a killer or an assassin, a
Right.
hitman, something like that. It's like, you really have to go way beyond yourself to like find how you can connect with that character. But
Yeah.
it's also kind of like, I think that I just use it as therapy for me, kind of
I
like
think I can see
finding
that.
my own insecurities or my own inner darkness.
Mhm.
And that's probably why I like those types of movies.
Okay. So, would you ever consider like doing Broadway?
I don't know. I mean, I would like to do a musical. I would like
Okay.
to be in Mamma Mia,
Yeah, I can say, yeah, I can
But
see
only
you doing
because
that.
I
Yeah.
saw Pierce Brosnan on that one. I was like, if James Bond can do it, then so can I.
Yeah. Awesome.
I would like to do that, or something more like Rock of Ages, which is a musical that Tom Cruise did.
Yeah.
It was very polemic and it was kind of a flop, but I would like to do something like that at some point. More than Broadway, I think I would just like to perform music. I
Okay.
also do some music and stuff, but I'm not as good as I am, in acting. But yeah, I'd like to, kind of
Okay.
explore that. I think there's a lot of, a lot of options to explore out there.
Yeah.
You can do Broadway, you can do musicals, you can do,
Yeah.
drama, you can do
Yeah.
comedy, you can do stand-up comedy, you can, do podcasts. It's just like
Yeah.
it's a
Exactly.
sea of opportunities out there. So,
Very
I see
much.
people sometimes like complaining. I'm like, I don't know what you're complaining about. You're just not taking advantage of what's
They aren't.
available to you.
No. I mean, it is. So, do you sing?
I do. I can't say that I sing well, but I do sing.
Okay. No, you get there. So, no. I mean, is there anything that intimidates you in this area that you're going into or
Yeah,
into?
singing in public.
So, you think he
Because,
does? Okay.
yeah, like, I can sing. I mean, let me rephrase that. I can sing, but I still need training. So I'm
Okay.
very
Okay.
insecure because I've been told by people who sing, singers and voice trainers and all this stuff, that
Right.
I do have a very great voice.
Do
Um,
that.
but I still need to perfect my technique and work on that, and work on my musical side. So it's kind of something that I always end up postponing. I want to, first be able to like focus and go 100% in on acting, and then, I
True.
do other stuff on the side. But don't ever ask me to like sing in public, because I'm just gonna run and find, the
Ah, come on.
totally place that I
I'll
can
join
find
you.
and hide there
We can
and
sing.
rock back and forth in a corner.
Uh,
But yeah, that intimidates me a little bit. But
no, that's so cool.
you
So,
know, what I did once. That's a very good lesson there.
okay.
I started taking singing lessons, and I
Okay.
did some stuff online, going through trainings and stuff. And I was still afraid of singing in public. So one day I just went out for a walk and I started singing. And I was
Cool.
like, maybe somebody out here in this park will hear me, but I don't give a shit, because at some point I'm gonna have to do it.
You
And
have
I did
such a
it. I was
great
like,
outlook. I mean,
well, that
that's the way
wasn't
to do
that
it.
bad,
Because so many
So
people care about what everybody else thinks. What they're doing.
right,
And it's freeing when you do the other way.
yeah,
You don't
it is.
care. So, no, I can't wait to meet you in person.
Yeah,
So,
me too. Me too.
I mean, are you coming to the United States anytime soon, or already have, or is that
Hopefully, I will. Maybe. I mean, in an ideal world, I would already be there. But
okay?
if everything works out and I don't have any setbacks, especially with my health,
Yeah,
um, that's the thing that's been holding me back the most for the last
I can see
two
that.
years.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I get mad at myself for not feeling all right, because I'm usually this very high energy. I was like, my friends used to call me Top Gun, because I was kind of like Tom Cruise, always
yeah.
running on a bike, outdoors, hiking, whatever, doing crazy shit, and climbing up rocks. And they were like, "Why are you doing that? There's a road here." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not challenging." And then all of a sudden, I kind of started getting stressed, and my nervous system kind of went just off, and
Hmm.
that's been holding me back a lot. But hopefully in the next couple years I
Right.
will get settled there, and get my own real estate there, and
Yep.
get things up and running. So
Right. Yes.
I'm very excited, because there's a lot of great things
Oh,
coming,
yes.
and I'm finally in that point in my life where I'm finally moving forward. So I'm happy
You
about that.
are. You are. So does I mean when you get stressed, does meditation or do anything like that? Does that help it?
I mean, it does, but sometimes I just have to go out for a walk, or just
No,
find something to distract myself.
I can
You know
understand.
what does work?
What's
Just
that?
watching a movie or watching a TV show. It's like, just get into the TV show,
Sure.
focus on what you're watching and forget about everything else.
True.
Because
There's a lot of wisdom there.
I do have a lot of I've been going through some PTSD,
Okay.
And sometimes you get this flashbacks from when you were a kid, or you
Yeah.
get this anxiety, you don't know where it's coming from, or all of a sudden you start thinking about all the stuff that you have to do and all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
And also, just turning to God for me, or
Yes.
Jesus. you know um,
Yes.
Soon it's gonna make 1 year anniversary when, uh, about a year ago, I wasn't really that much into God and Jesus as Christianity.
Right.
And I
Right.
don't like to put labels on faith because it's a very personal thing. But I
It
would say
is.
mostly I'm Christian, right?
Uh.
Um, but I remember, a year ago, I was just kind of lost in my life,
Okay.
and it was a Sunday. It was Easter, and I was just, I don't know why. I was like, I don't know why. I have to take a walk today. I have to go
Uh.
out today. And I went out, and for whatever reason, I'm going, I'm walking past the church, and the doors are wide open.
Oh really?
I walked
Okay.
in, and I walked in there, and I'm like, I'm home. And I had this
Oh,
this
wow.
overwhelming feeling. Everything that I've always wanted, everything that I've always chased, you know,
Right.
everything that I always lacked, it was always right here. You
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
And then they had a couple of churchgoers or volunteers. I don't know
Oh sure. Uh
what
huh.
they were. Um, they were like bringing to the church um, a statue of the Virgin Mary, and I
Okay.
was like, you know, I never had a mom, but here's my mother, and
Yeah.
I never had a father, but I always had a father.
Exactly.
And it was
Yes.
like this overwhelming feeling. I still get goosebumps when I talk about it,
Wow. That's.
because for the first time in my life, I felt like I'm home. And just,
Yeah.
I remember
It's
when I
that
was a kid
feeling.
just praying, God take me home, and I was like,
Mhm.
am I not home right now? And
Mhm.
so that's something that kind of helps me, kind of snap out of that anxiety, or those
Right.
nerves, and be just like, God, just help me do my best.
Yes.
And He
Yes.
does.
He
He
does.
does.
Yes.
The Bible says, ask and it will be given, seek
Yep.
and you shall find. But you have to ask, you have to
You
seek,
do.
knock on the doors.
You definitely do.
So yeah, that's also a big part of my life too.
So I always ask on the Dreamcatcher podcast, was this what you dreamt of doing when you were younger? What you're doing
Yeah,
now?
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And
So
as I said, it's mind blowing because I never had any doubts about it. You know, it was like
that's
I don't know to what extent I chose it or it chose me.
could be, yeah. Could be either way. So did you have any other dreams and stuff? Do you have anything else that's still over there that you want to accomplish before you get to be 30?
Well, business of I want to be in business, and
uh,
entrepreneurship has always been something that I've been interested in.
okay.
Of course, we all know that if you want to make money in this world, you got to be an
Right.
entrepreneur. You can be just a slave, um, which is of course having a job, right?
Right.
So yeah, and I'm also working on that, and I get to meet a lot of people, and ironically, just two things that go hand in hand. If you
Yeah.
know how to build a business, you're gonna know how to build an acting business, and if
True.
you know how to
Yes.
find investors, then you're gonna know how to produce a movie. And but yeah, I would like to do something in regards to that, and probably help people get started in their businesses and stuff. But I actually, I'm also building my own production company. Um, my dream is to have that production company be like one of the major studios in the next decades.
Okay.
And I think that's my approach is, a little bit different because I always thought that the only way for you to win is when you help other people win, right?
Amen.
So what I want to do is I want to build a production company that's not solely focused on making money. I want to
Cool.
make things happen, and of course, I
Yeah.
want to make money because I'm a producer, and that's what I got to do. And if you don't make money, then
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not gonna be able to make a living.
Exactly.
But I want to go back to dreams. I think that the world today is very, very, very focused on hustle and bustle and
Oh
grind
boy, is
and
it.
and push to get to your dreams and whatever. And it's like, just focus on your dream, dude. You have a dream
Amen.
for it, and that's it. Just don't think about the house or whatever.
Yep.
Sure, you have to figure out some stuff,
Yep.
and
True.
of
Yeah.
course you have to, go through some training, go to, take an acting class or take a marketing course, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. You're right.
Of course you have to do that stuff, but
You do.
don't push too hard, because what I found in my life is that the harder I push, the harder it becomes, you
Uh,
know.
yes.
So I want to
Yes.
go back to just, whatever happened to dreams.
Yep.
So yeah, that's
It
but
is.
again, what I do is just, I'm just acting out my dream, and
Yeah.
um, and I
And
love that.
and you take massive action. So
Yeah.
something that most people don't do.
And that's why
And
I get burnt out.
but I don't think I don't see you being burned out. You
Oh,
got
I
to know
am.
how much to push it, and like you say, I think that we always get the grind mentality and stuff, and it's
Yeah.
like I get that because it's like, well, you're not going to get your dream if you don't grind every day, and it's like the only thing I'm going to grind is coffee beans, so
I love that one.
and,
But
and
I mean,
and
you do
I
have to take
but
some action, of course. And there's times when you do have to grind. Like I
yeah,
remember a couple months ago, there was this big event in
uh,
Barcelona, and I went there 2 days in a row, just going up and down, working the rooms. There were like 5 venues or whatever, and I'm like,
right,
I was so tired, but I knew it was like it was happening for 3 days. I had those 3 days to go to the city, and
yep,
I had to do it. But then when I went home, I was like, okay, just relax. You don't have
kind of
to
chill, yeah,
push so hard now. You just take it all in
yeah,
and take your time to reach out to people and whatnot. But
yep,
and just like learn how to keep the momentum. It's not
yeah,
as much about hustle and grind as it is about momentum.
true,
And be able
yeah,
to kind of just be there, and if you're a public figure, for example, right, like that's where I'm most familiar with, is just be present and every now and then do a podcast or do an interview,
yeah,
post a video, whatever,
yep,
and keep people posted on what you're doing, and don't just go into
exactly,
hiding, but just keep the momentum, and
yep.
don't be afraid to lose momentum or whatever, because sometimes you also need those periods of stillness where nothing is happening, and then all of a sudden you get that, oh my god, this is what I had to do,
Yeah, get the most inspiration in those quiet moments. Yeah.
right.
So,
So if you're always grinding, you're never gonna get that inspiration, because it's just your mind is constantly on overdrive, and it's just
yes.
racing all the time, and you're always
Yep.
trying to get to the next thing. It's like
Yep.
you miss a lot when you're
You
doing that.
do. Yeah, you do. I just had a flash. Have you ever thought about becoming a politician? I don't know. All of a
Yes,
sudden, I could see you speaking in front of, like,
yes. I actually want to be a senator at some point in my
I
life.
could definitely
So
see you doing that. It just came across
yeah.
my mind. It flashed. It was like the
I,
politician,
I think you're a little bit psychic.
I think so. But it's just like you would be a great politician because you would definitely be genuine, which
Oh yeah, I do.
I mean, there's genuines out there, but there's politicians have a bad name anyway.
Yeah,
So, but there are the ones that stand out because the ones that are genuine. So,
yeah,
but you want to be a senator, okay?
yeah. As either a senator or a governor, like Arnold
Okay,
Schwarzenegger.
okay,
uh, I get a lot of inspiration from him too. Yeah, it's just about going back to the basics. Just
yep,
humanity, and like right now, I see all this division,
uh,
especially in politics, right?
yes,
Um, I'm a little bit conservative, and I'm kind of a Republican, so I lean towards
uh,
conservatism and all this stuff. But at the same time, I also think that everything that goes to an extreme is bad. So if you're
yes,
an extreme Republican, an extremist Republican, that's bad. But
it
if you're
is.
an extreme liberal, that's also bad, right?
Yep, yep,
So I think that what we need right now in society, and especially in the United States, is just
oh yes,
unity, and
ah,
just to be able to leave our crap aside and just like take a
yep,
look at what's going on, right?
yep.
Like, come
So,
on, wake up,
okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, and that's why here, because everybody's like, "Are you a Republican or a Democrat?" And I'm neither. I'm an independent, so that's why
yeah,
how I'm registered. Because it's like I see both sides. There's that I like, and both sides I don't care for
Yeah.
stuff, but I just this extremism, it's like my way or no way, and it's like that doesn't get you anywhere. It just
Yeah.
makes. But I thought, well, with Trump, and I like him because he's an action taker. I think he
Yeah.
talks too much, but he's getting. I mean, what they're finding for the money that has been wasted, is unbelievable. So,
Exactly. And then I run into like extreme liberals, and they're like, oh, Donald Trump. And I'm like, dude, you might like him or not. But the truth is, after the last 4 years, he's doing shit. And that's all I care about,
yeah,
So he's doing
no,
shit. And I'm sorry, but, you need somebody that knows what they're doing to run a
you
country.
do. You can tell
You
he's a
need
businessman.
someone who has actually done.
Yes,
And
yes.
this guy has been in business
Oh
for
yeah,
decades. He's made billions.
yep.
So I'm sorry, you put somebody who I don't know where she came from. Yeah, I just don't see it,
No,
So,
I didn't either. So, but I
so
mean,
yeah,
I did a post. Actually, I did a video the other day, and it's like divided we fall, and we're still, if not more divided. It's like if we fall, we must have to start selling things off. To pay our $37 trillion debt. It's just like maybe we can get a lot for California, a lot for Florida. It's like if we can't come together,
yeah,
we need to come together and solve a problem or
yeah.
problems.
And I love Kennedy. I was actually rooting for Kennedy for the election. So when he
Yeah,
went with Trump, that's when I knew. I was like, yeah, he knows.
yeah,
So when you have this guy, his family they were Democrats, right? And this guy
mhm,
was a registered Democrat, and
yeah.
he's going and rooting and teaming up with a Republican. It's like that tells you something.
It does a
And
lot.
what I realized with this election was that for once it wasn't about Republican or Democrat. It was just about the right thing and putting
Yes.
the right person there.
Yeah.
And if you had asked me like the last time Trump run, I would
Uh-huh.
have probably said no, no
Mhm,
way, you know.
mhm.
But then I you see stuff, and I also got into business. I changed a lot, and I was like, yeah, it just that's the way it is. To
Yeah.
run a country, you can just be a politician. I think that's the problem. Is that politicians don't know what it's like to do the work.
Very
They don't.
true.
Most of them they don't have businesses.
No.
They're not lawyers.
Nope.
Some of them are, but most of them are just politicians.
They are.
When you have
Yeah.
somebody who's a
Sure.
lawyer, you know, make laws, that's
Yeah.
when shit works.
It
When you have a
does.
businessman running a country, that's when the country works.
Yep.
So that's kind of
It,
I
it,
also think that I could be of service in that sense, is that
yeah.
I've
And
done the work and I'm doing the work. So at some point I would like to be able to be of service. And
you
I
will
actually
be.
have the dream for the state of New York, if I get to be governor or senator,
There you
to
go.
get it back to being the empire state that it once was.
Yes.
Back in the 80s, it was like New York, the empire state. If you
It
can make
was.
it here, you can make it anywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
What's happened to that?
Yeah.
California is on fire. Nobody's doing anything about it. New York is
Yeah.
just another city, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Nope.
And I think we got to do it. Just that's who we are. That's our identity.
It is.
So if you have something good, you've got Hollywood, you've got the Empire State, you've got business and all that stuff. Why are
Yep.
we not taking advantage of that?
Amen. I 100% agree. So, and
It
you
just doesn't
probably
make
could
any
run
sense.
for governor in California. They probably definitely are looking for getting rid of Newsom.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about California, but definitely I have a lot of dreams for New York. It just
Yeah. And I can see that too. And it is. I mean, both those states have really they aren't what they're way from their pinnacle. So,
yeah,
in California, almost everybody that I knew in California has moved out of California.
yeah.
Most of them have moved to Texas. And it's like, Texas is not California, guys.
Yeah, I know.
So,
But
Texas,
yeah, that's the thing. I don't want to shit on Democrats or anything like that, because that will only add up to the division, right? But it's true that like with the Texas and all of that stuff, you've got people who had businesses in California who are going to Florida, and you're gonna do nothing about it. How much do you actually love your state? How much do you actually love your country?
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. People don't love their country. They don't really have that love, that passion, that drive to go and do it.
They
And then
don't.
the people who do have it, most of them, they don't want to run for governor or
Yeah.
senator
That is true.
or president because they know that
Yes.
it's just too much work, and they're like, yeah, I don't want that responsibility.
Yeah.
But those are the good ones.
They are. They are. That's true. And I had a discussion the other day with, they were worried about their benefits going away. And I can understand that. But I said, if the country fails, all our benefits go away.
Yeah.
So I said, sometimes you have to just do the tough thing and we've kicked the can down the road for a long time. And it's like, I'm amazed we can still finance our debt. That is, I can't even imagine how much this country would have thrived without that debt hanging over our head. So, but they don't see it. They see, and I can understand seeing what's in it for me, especially if they're used to all these government programs. But it does. If the government can't do it, then those programs go away. So, but it doesn't. It maybe it resonates on some level with them, but I don't know. It just. That's one thing I'm glad I'm in the central part of the United States. It's conservative and pretty good government here. So, and our government, Nebraska can't run a deficit. We have to have a balanced budget every year. So that's in our Constitution, which is a good thing. And plus, in Nebraska, we still know each other, and it's just everybody thinks it's backwards, but it's like it kind of reminds me of the United States was like 50 years ago. More, it's just.
Well, I think we need to go backwards. I think we need to go backwards. We need to look back. I've read the Constitution, and when I see what our founding fathers stood for, it's like, where exactly did we lose track of that?
Yes,
exactly. Not exactly like it was back in 1776, but that spirit of the British are oppressing us, so we're not going to take it anymore. Now here we are. Oh, so our government is stealing billions from us. Oh, well, but I don't like Trump. And it's like, dude, come on.
Yeah, they should think about that.
Are you telling me that the last 300 or whatever years mean nothing to you? Everything that we've gone through, and sure, we've done some really, really crappy shit. And we've gotten involved with stuff that we shouldn't have gotten involved with. Yes. But we've moved past that. And I think, I always say, I always tell people, I haven't been in the military, but if I were, I would die for the United States. And this is the only country that I would die for, and I would do it with pride.
Awesome.
So, but that's what our founding fathers stood for.
Exactly, yes.
That's the spirit we need. And if we take that away, it's like we'll lose part of our identity. And a lot of people have lost that,
They go very, very much.
And so, that's why I think we need to go backwards. Not exactly backwards, but
I know what you mean.
Back in, back to those values.
Yeah, exactly. We've
and
lost a lot of values.
So, yeah.
No.
I like that.
Yeah. My wife and I were talking. It's like, it's a good thing that we don't have, because the mindset was during World War II, do whatever it takes,
Yeah.
And I don't know if this country maybe we get back to that, something like, I pray that it never happens like that again. But I just, where everybody pulls together, for the good of the world, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's very interesting. And I don't know. You can't run for president, but you can run for governor and stuff in the United States, can't you?
Yeah.
So,
except for president, I think I can run for senator, governor, and all that stuff. I mean, Arnold did it, so I'll figure out how to do it.
That's true. I forgot about that. So, so do you know some actors? Do you know Arnold, or do you know, or any actors?
I don't know him like personally, but I do have some connections and some stuff. So I'm really moving up, towards getting to know some people who are like kind of serious about it.
Okay.
So hopefully I'll get them on my podcast at some point.
Yeah.
So I actually have a whole list of people. So
that would be
it
cool.
would be very interesting,
Would you? I mean, if one of them wanted to mentor you, would you take him up on that, or would you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was gonna say that'd be
Absolutely.
awesome.
Like that's also part of, the trade. And
Yeah,
following your dreams is like, if somebody else has already done it and they offer you, to teach you and whatever, like, of course, and take
yeah.
every opportunity that you can to learn and whatever. So yeah.
No, I could. I think you're gonna have quite a few people that want to mentor you, and I can see you mentoring a lot of other people too. So,
Yeah, I hope so.
do you coach
um,
now, or do you coach kind of like with what you're doing?
I did a little bit of coaching, but just privately with people that I was
Okay,
working with. They were in like my team and stuff like that. Um, if somebody were like really, really interested and I see the potential in them, I
right.
might take them up, and really coach them and, mentor them. But it's just, I don't really see myself as a mentor or anything like that.
You know,
Um, I,
not in
I'm,
that space
I
yet.
guess I could probably be a role model of some sort, but, I just like to just share my story and just
Yep.
take what you like, take what resonates, and don't let the rest take from you, right? So
Yes. Yes.
I
Uh,
actually stole this from somebody. I can't remember who it is, but I know that somebody on social media says that. So,
yeah. So, what are some other interests you have?
uh, I don't think I have a lot of interest. Actually, I read a
Ah,
lot.
right.
No, I'm a very pretty simple guy, and I'm kind of boring. Sometimes
That I don't believe for a second. No.
it's interesting because I'm very much into acting, and I just, as I said, I'm kind of like Tom Cruise. Just I
Yeah.
watch a movie a day, sometimes even 3 or 4 movies in one day.
Uh,
So I like to stay up to date with what's going on and watch types of movie that I'm interested in.
right.
I read, I meditate, pray and
Cool.
all this stuff, and I do some sports when I'm feeling, good and all this stuff.
Okay.
But I think, yeah, I'm a very pretty simple guy.
Well,
Just
there's nothing wrong with that. So, do you have a bunch of actors or actresses that you really watch and aspire to look at what they're doing every day, or
yeah,
watch what they're doing, in their
yeah,
business, in their
yeah,
career?
absolutely. And I remember, I mean, Tom Cruise has been like the biggest role model for me.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and I remember, back, I think it was when Top Gun Maverick came out. I
Mm-hmm.
was in a pivotal moment in my life where I was kind of starting a business, and I was like following my dreams, but I was like not quite in
Uh-huh.
100% with anything,
Uh-huh.
and I wasn't really acting, I wasn't really doing business, I was just, what do I do, and I was
Right.
like,
Right.
that was what, 2 3 years ago. So I was, a little bit younger and
Uh-huh.
still lost, trying to figure out my way. And then Top Gun Maverick came out, and it was like, I remember I went into the movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the box office they have kind of like this display stuff where they put the posters.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Right.
So it was like, I don't know in the United States, but it's always like, up there somewhere in the wall, and then
Uh-huh. Yes.
right, under it, there's the box office where you buy the tickets, right?
Right. Exactly.
So I remember one day I'm just walking by the local theater, and I go in, and I see, that big poster with, Tom Cruise, in front of a fighter jet.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it like that. It was like a spiritual moment, like looking at it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna be the next one up there, and I don't care what it takes, but I'm gonna be there, and you'll see. And then the
There's
guy
a lot of
comes in
power in
and he's
that.
like, I'm sorry, we're closed, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I was just looking for the schedule for Top Gun, But I had
Maybe Top
this
Gun.
moment where it was like, yeah, I'm going in. And then, I started just watching a lot of, the content with Tom Cruise and what his mindset was like. That was
Right.
probably the closest thing to him mentoring me, you know. Um, I don't think he's gonna see this, but if he does, hey Tom, I'm all about meeting you and having you
Awesome.
mentor me. So, but
And you never know. The
yeah,
world,
but
God works in mysterious ways.
yeah,
So,
I know, right?
and I can see you doing a remake of Top Gun. I can see you doing that movie.
Yeah, I would love to be in Top Gun, and I actually this is kind of embarrassing, but right after Top Gun Maverick,
Uh-huh.
they wanted to do a third Top Gun movie.
Okay.
And when you're in this industry, you kind of have some insight and some
Sure.
insider
Yeah.
information. And it's
Yeah.
like it's not like I know a lot about what's going on, but you have some early access on some things, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And there were talks that Tom Cruise wasn't going to do a third Top Gun movie. I was like,
Okay.
I think that because I had watched him so much and I had seen his interviews and the way he thinks and all this stuff. I was like, if you get the right story in front of him, he's gonna do it.
Yeah. Right.
So guess what I did? I
Uh-huh.
went and started writing a story for Top Gun 3. And
That's cool.
I had the script, I had the idea, and I was in like such a flow state that at some points I was like, I wasn't even sure whether I was actually like somehow connecting telepathically to Tom Cruise or whatever.
Maybe.
I was
Yeah.
like, it felt like that, like just God was leading me towards, something.
Yep.
And then I had the script, I had the idea, and I just had to kind of wait it out and find who do I pitch, who do I talk to, how do I get
Right.
this in front of him, right? And there goes my mind. Oh, James, are you really sure you want to do this?
Ah.
I mean, I don't know. Tom Cruise is never gonna do a third Top Gun movie.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, man. Just this story isn't really that good. You should really work on it a little bit more and
Yeah.
whatever.
That all comes together.
I'm just gonna wait and do other stuff in
Uh-huh.
the meantime. And next thing you know, I found out that Tom Cruise is actually doing a third Top Gun movie, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
somebody please kill me now. But I was like, if there's something that I can learn from that is that never again I'm gonna doubt myself because I could have
Yes.
been the guy that wrote the third Top Gun movie.
Yes.
And it's like that's why that was like a wake up call that I had. I was like,
Yep.
God damn it, man! You just whatever comes your way, just take it, and just take
Exactly.
advantage of. If you have this nudge or this feeling
And you
that you
get
have
there
to
for
do
a reason.
something,
Yes.
you have to do it.
You
Just
do.
go do it.
Yep.
That's why I'm probably acting my dreams is because I just have nudges and I know that I have to act on those.
Those are
So
very important to pay attention to those. That's for sure.
yeah,
So, but we
so
all
that,
do what you said you did. We do that. You
yeah,
know.
but I think it was meant to happen too. You know, I
Yeah.
think I was meant to have that realization
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
yeah, don't do that again.
Yeah. It got you to that point. Yeah. Not to do it
Yeah,
again. So,
and I probably wouldn't be here if I hadn't had that moment in my life, because that was like every time I've had a failure, then I've come back even stronger. And
agree.
this there's this scene in The Last Samurai, when Tom Cruise is like fighting they're teaching
Hmm.
him how to fight with the swords and all that stuff, and they keep beating the living hell out of him, and he
Uh-huh.
just refuses to stay down, and he keeps getting up and getting up
Yep.
and getting up, and I'm like, that's me.
Yep.
Every
Yes.
time somebody says no, I'm like, well, no, you'll see.
It makes you
And it's like
stronger. Yes.
I thrive when somebody says no or when I fail on something because then I had the ability to turn that into my motivation and my
You
drive.
do. Oh yeah.
That no actually gives me something to shoot for, which is the yes, right? And it's like,
Right. Exactly.
yeah, that's kind of my motivation too.
No, and that's the way to do it. But why do so many people take it as it's like they go the other way? I mean,
Yeah,
why do you? I mean, how do you get to how do you? Maybe you've always been partly that way, but how do you get to that point of being that driven? Like a no is going to be a yes.
I don't know. I honestly, at some point, um, 2 years ago, or I would say, 2, 3, 4 years ago, um, I had been acting for a while when I was 18, 19. Then I stopped for a little bit. And then when I really decided to go back, I
Uh,
knew that I couldn't do things the same way I had been doing them before, right?
okay.
So at some point, I just tried to be different and do things differently. And
Okay.
that's kind of why I mentioned Joe Dispenza earlier. He talks about how most people, most therapists and psychologists and whatnot, they teach you to go back to the trauma and heal the trauma and then you
Oh
move
yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
But when you do that, you're just keeping yourself stuck in that trauma.
You are. Yes.
So at some point, you're just gonna have to say, okay, that happened. Just fuck it. Let's move forward.
Move on. Yeah.
And at some point, you just kind of have to sit down with yourself and say, who do I want to be? How do I want to be?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
what do I want people to know me for? Or
Yep.
how
Yep.
do I want to perceive myself? And then you just kind of start doing that stuff, you know?
It is.
And that's what happened to me. You know, I was like so inspired by Top Gun that, it was just like, I don't know, I'm just going to act like I could be a Top Gun, you know?
Why not? I mean,
Just
there's no
act and
reason you can't be.
right. And just act as if, it's just,
Yes.
there's really
Yes.
no secret,
Yep.
At some point you're going to have to decide, do you want to change or not?
Yeah.
And I get it. Change is scary
It is. Yeah.
and it can be difficult, but think about, all the good stuff that's going to come after you change.
Yeah.
If somebody had told me 2 years ago that thanks to me going on that journey, I would be
Mm-hmm.
sitting here today having this conversation
Uh-huh.
and that people would actually listen to this,
Uh-huh.
I would have probably told you like, yeah, sure. Are you drunk or
I
something?
understand that
You know?
thinking. Yeah.
How much did you have to drink?
Yeah.
But here I am, and so,
Yeah.
just take the chances and don't be afraid,
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're afraid, like I'm afraid sometimes, and as I said,
Yeah.
I get anxiety and I get doubts and fears and whatnot, but
Yep.
just do it anyways.
Yeah. Be afraid. Yeah. You just got to.
Because when something is calling you, it's calling you for a reason,
It is.
And sometimes you can see it at that particular moment, but in due time, you will see why. So that's why you have to go and do it, because then you look back and it's like, oh yeah, that day when I thought,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and it's
Connect
like,
all the,
oh, now I get it. There's
Yes.
that quote that says that life is only understood backwards, but it can only
True.
be lived forwards, right?
Yeah.
So,
No, very true. And all the stuff that if you didn't do it, all the stuff you would miss, and all the people are waiting for you to do it.
yeah,
Everybody's like your audience, everybody's out there waiting for you to do what you need to do.
yeah,
So I tell people that all the time. It's just like your audience, your tribe, your vibe attracts your tribe, and it's true. That's even with the podcasting. I had so many people come to my, helping me,
yeah,
and it's just like, and that's when people say they don't know. It's like I had no clue with the first podcast or first quite a few I didn't know.
right.
So and it still evolves, but you just do it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the only way you only really learn how to do it is to do it, to take action. So
And I found out, I found that the hard way, because I used to be really into like, I had to know everything before I did something, and by the time I knew everything, the opportunity was gone, right?
mhm.
And
Yep.
at some point, I was like, all these big CEOs, for example, do you think they know how to do marketing? No, they just have a guy that does.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like, you don't need to know how to do everything. You just need
No.
to know how to make it work, or figure out a way to make it work.
Yes. Yes.
And everything that you need will come to you.
It will. Yep, it will. And I have a friend in Michigan, and he's like, if you don't know how to do it, there's somebody out there that does, and hire them. And I've taken that to heart. It's just like, I'm going to hire them to do that because they're much better than I am. And
Yeah, exactly.
and that's why over the years I've had like 3 coaches and stuff like that. I'm big into coaches, and everybody's like, well, coaches are expensive. It's like, no, they're not if they help you shorten the learning curve. So no, I just you just need to take action. And I can't wait to see. Have you written a book, or are you writing a book right now?
I'm not writing a book, but I do want to write a memoir at some point.
Okay.
And, but I want to, have some more experience in the show business, because I know people love that nitty gritty details. So,
Yeah, there you go.
so I want to be able to tell those stories. But
Okay.
yeah, I've always had that dream also. When I was a kid, I always thought I'm going to write a book about this someday. And
You doing that?
yeah, I like to write a book. And what I'm doing a lot is, trying to write my own stories, my own movies and stuff. I haven't been doing it lately, but I want to go back to that because I have a very um, I have a different creative process. I'm an actor, and so
Sure.
most writers, they go and they sit down and they write the story, and I can do that too. I
Right.
remember one time I just sat down and I wrote a script in like a night. So I
Okay.
just, one summer night, I had nothing to do, and I did it,
This
and
is
it
just
was 120 pages in 4 hours.
wow.
But at this point, I'm kind of going through a little bit of a writer's block, and so
Okay.
what I do is I kind of reverse engineer it. I first build a
Yeah, there
character,
you go.
and then from the character's perspective, I try to figure out what's the story, and then from there, I develop the story. And I'm working on a few good stories that I have, um, and it's kind of hard for me to sit down because I have so many stories that I want to tell, and
Uh-huh.
they're all so different and so exciting, and they have a lot of potential. But it's like, which one do I start with?
Yeah.
So yeah. But I am working on that, and yeah, hopefully I'll get those movies done at some point.
You will. I have no doubt. I really have no doubt. So just because it's it's definitely your calling, your
Yeah,
passion, definitely.
yeah.
So and that has a way of moving you forward even during the tough times. That's for sure. So.
Yeah.
So James, before we end the podcast, is there anything else you would like?
You froze there. I'm sorry. Can
Oh,
you repeat that?
before we end the podcast, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience?
Uh, well, just a reminder to follow your dreams, um, to believe in the bigger picture.
Yes.
Don't get caught up in whatever's going on right now.
Yeah.
Uh, your current circumstances. If God put a calling in your heart, it's for a reason, and you
Yes.
should. I don't think that you should. I think that you must, listen to
Yep.
that calling and
Yep.
answer the call.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I always tell people, think about your favorite actor, your favorite musician. Imagine if back then, when they were starting out, they
Yep.
had said, "Oh, I think I could be a great actor, but you know what? I'm just gonna go and become a truck driver."
Yeah. Yeah.
All that, the waste of talent,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
and it would have been a complete waste of their existence. So don't
Yep.
don't let that be you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that's
That's
probably.
that's great wisdom. Yeah, that is great
Thank
wisdom.
you.
Yeah, because I mean, you're very wise for your age, extremely
Thank
wise.
you.
But that if people would just take that into to heart, because
Yeah.
it is kind of a waste of what you were actually put here. And I always say that too. If this dream was given to you, you have the wherewithal to do it. I mean, it won't be easy because you got to grow into the person that can do that dream.
Yeah.
So, but it's so worth it in the end for you and everybody. The ripple, and I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of ripple. So,
Me too. The
round the
butterfly effect, right?
what's that?
The butterfly effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much to that. That's for sure. So,
Yeah.
but James, thanks for joining me on the podcast, the Dream Catcher
My
podcast.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I can't, like I said, I hope when you're in the United States, I hope I get to meet you in person sometime.
Oh, absolutely. You'll be the first one I'll call.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, okay, you live by Barcelona, or how close are you to that? If I'm in Spain, so are you close to that, Barcelona?
Yeah, I'm like an hour away or so.
Okay.
But I'm looking to move to Madrid and move a lot. I'm at a point where I wanted to really go out there and find stuff to do. I've been really like kind of stationary for the last few
Okay.
years, and
Right.
it's interesting because everything around me is just like pulling me towards like getting out of where I'm currently living, right? So
Yeah.
my dad lives here, and that's fine, with him.
Right.
But it's time to move on. It's time to
Yeah.
move on, and so I want to go to Madrid and move a little bit around Germany and stuff like that. And that's what I have in mind for the next the next couple of years. That's what I want to
That's
do.
awesome.
So, yeah.
I'll just say, hey, James, where you at?
Yeah, exactly.
What country?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm just gonna have fun with it.
So yeah, I definitely got to meet up, and we probably talk for hours. I think we could talk on a podcast for quite a few hours too.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
So this has been great, and thank you. And
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate
and I look forward to watching you grow, because I mean you've already, for your age, you've already grown so much.
Yeah.
And you're so inspirational. And
Thank you.
and we'll keep in touch. And
Absolutely.
thank you again for being on the podcast. And take care.
Thank you, Mark. Take care.